The tackling of women. Women in the sphere of rapists. I was like in the sphere of rapists. All these countries, I've been kind of paying attention globally because I want to make sure I'm on point with every country, state, and piece of you know what across the globe. Because if we're not hitting everything, then we're off point, right? We're not on target. So, one of the things with women, they are brainwashed bots that have to be told to allow sexual abuse on themselves. Okay, so that was kind of the origin of all this stuff. So they're kind of like indoctrinated as children to raise their kids and sons. Now, these sons are coming from somewhere, right? These rapist sons, okay? They have mothers. A lot of them have mothers. They had a mom at a time, okay? But sometimes they do get a lot of their information from the father, if he's even present, okay? Or some acting father role, or even a lack of one, and it's like mom is the one that's, doing all this stuff. And so there is a thing with the moms abusing the sons, and then they grow up and they hate women. There is a thing with that too. So there's a lot in this, okay? So we're pulling out from all this stuff. But for some reason, men use women as pawns, going, look, we're like pro women because we put a woman as a president somewhere in some country, or some crap. I go, no, they still got problems. They still got head problems, okay, on these topics. And they just reinforce male supremacy, right? That whole thing. So this is Hungarian President Katalin Novak resigns over child abuse pardon scandal. If you go back when we were talking about the Indian thing, the schools, I go, yeah, a lot of the women, so they were taught to abuse the kids. They got abused. So to them, this is normal life, okay? So they put her as president. Everybody's like, ooh, a woman, first president. I don't know, some bullshit. Let's see. The president of Hungary has resigned live on television over a decision to pardon a man convicted of covering up a child sexual abuse case. I also want to point out the hypocrisy of this, because every man that's ever been president has pardoned rapists all day long and child sexual predator all day long. Okay, this is a common thing from men. This is a very common thing for men in positions of power. But this woman gets in a position now for like, I guess the first time. I think it gets into that. But all of a sudden, she got to go. But the men could stay because the men are the ones that have promoted this to begin with, right? Okay. It was revealed that last week, President Novak had given clemency to a man jailed for forcing children to retract sexual abuse claims against a director of a state-run children's home. Protests calling for her to step down had been growing in Hungary. Okay, so Miss Novak apologized and said she made a mistake. How do you make a mistake over that? It's like, here's a rapist. It's like, oh, we should just pardon him. I feel really bad for, but I don't know. But in granting the pardon, Judith Varga, the former Minister of Justice who approved the pardon, has also resigned from her new role. 2 women? Okay, from her new role. Evil Karens up in here. No, they're not okay. That's why I said, everybody's totally a hot mess. Okay, her new role leading the European elections campaign for Prime Minister Viktor Orban's ruling Fidesz party. Okay, I literally just pointed out on my last thing that everybody's the problem, everybody enables it, and everybody got touched. Okay, this is what we're finding out and all this stuff. Okay, it's almost impossible that they didn't get touched, as we're seeing in this stuff. And she's still okay with this violence. It's like one of those things where she just minimized because she got raped to hell as a kid or something, and because men told her she needs to follow, because she's probably, I don't know if she's Christian, we'll get to it because it starts going into this other thing. The controversy which led to the resignation came after the names of 25 people pardoned by Ms. Novak in April last year as part of a visit to Hungary by Pope Francis. Is she Catholic? Okay, Well, he's a male supremacist, so he promotes rape and violence and everything on women and to control them. So rape is not about sex, right? So rape is all these things things of being anti-agency, right? Go against your will. You got to do this even though you don't want to. Like there's this thing. That's the messaging. There's a lot of that. It's in everything. So then it says were made public by a Hungarian media last week. On the list of convicts was the deputy director of children's home near Budapest, who had been jailed for 3 years after forcing children to retract claims of abuse against the director of the home. The director had himself been jailed for 8 years over abusing children at the government-run facility. It's so common because the abuses are at home, in the public, and who is wanting these facilities like that to begin with, right? Christians, because they believe in whip and chains and abuse till you become a good kid, which is not what happens. They turn into sociopaths or very ill kid. They have a lot of other issues, right? That is forever, and so they're not healthy. How do you make somebody into a good person by abusing the crap out of them? But this is Christian philosophy. And so that's part of their indoctrination and, everything. Okay. Hungarian opposition parties and protesters have been demanding her resignation, but Ms. Novak's decision to do so was as sudden as it was unexpected. Ms. Novak is a popular figure in Fidesz and a rare female politician in a male-dominated country. Well, you're going to be a hot mess in a male-dominated country just generally because your environment is hella crappy. Okay, so she is a key ally of Hungarian Mr. Orban and previously worked as his family minister. In 2022, she became the first woman to hold the largely ceremonial role of Hungarian president. The case has unleashed an unprecedented political scandal for Hungary's long-serving nationalist government. In particular, it caused deep embarrassment for Fidesz, which has made traditional family values the cornerstone of its social policy. Well, she's actually acting out traditional family values, which is rape kids, keep it quiet, and keep it going on, and create the monster. So technically, she's following the rules. And you're supposed to, the whole forgive the perp and then just let him get off. Yeah, totally. I mean, she's following it to a T. Technically. Speaking in an address live on TV, Ms. Novak said she granted the pardon in the belief the convicted man did not exploit the vulnerability of the children under his oversight. I don't know. She apologized to the victims who might have felt that I did not stand up for them. I made a mistake, as the pardon and the lack of reasoning were conducive to triggering doubts about the zero tolerance that applies to pedophilia. Actually, it's more about just general sexual abuse. Like, it really, okay, honest to God, the focus should not be like pedophiles, like this thing, like this, because they're just rapists and they go for anybody. Because a lot of them, they'll go rape kids and adults. Like, there's no particular preference on ages. I was trying to point that out because a long time ago they were trying to say they only go for kids. I'm like, no, we could pull out a whole bunch of them. They're like, I'll rape that guy, I'll rape that girl, I'll rape your mom, I'll rape your kids. You know, this whole thing. It's a mindset behind this. Now, while some of them do specifically go for very young and this other thing, there's a lot in this. It's not a very easy black and white topic, because I was trying to pull up yesterday on the thing about people with certain disabilities that don't even have really the capacity to go on with this type of thinking that, these type of people right here would. But they'll still offend if, like, they get harmed as kids, and it's kind of, this way. I'm just trying to touch all of it because it's a hefty topic. It's getting more and more hefty as we go, because I'm learning about, oh, all the different things that it actually entails, like with the child abuse, to this mentality with this doctrine, and then these women that are continually indoctrinated into this, and they're growing into adults, and then they go re-abuse, and then they completely like minimize it as kids, so then they okay shit like this, as you see, right? And then it's like non-fixable at that point. She's just getting busted, so she's like, I mean, inside, does she really feel like she did anything wrong? Maybe not. And the more you're learning, or we're all learning, I hope, there's a lot of child abuse. Like, there's a lot, and it has a lot to do with that portion right there. And then they don't focus on it, and they start going off on this whole pedo thing, right? They are a bunch of pedos, but they don't really care. Like, they're like, we don't care about ages. It's about people not being able to consent, and so they look at, people to take advantage of, and of course children are the best, and also they want the kids as well to indoctrinate into their damn religions, into male supremacy, and uphold male power, right? Male power. And so they indoctrinate that very young, and then so they're trying to mute that message, and they're trying to mute the message that they're a bunch of rapists. Now they know they're a bunch of rapists, because they wouldn't put in the laws like to allow raping your wife, so they know what they're doing. It isn't a thing, oh, we're so ignorant, we don't know we're a bunch of rapists. It's like, who would okay that? Oh, only rapists, right? So and so women are just really into this thing of being abused and minimizing it, because the perpetrators made her minimize it. It's kind of that thing. And so she's up in here, oh, and then the whole, like, we got to forgive them, and it's not a big deal. I was like, yeah, because the perpetrators told you to do that, right? That's why I said you got to be careful with that, because they're going to totally manipulate you to hell. And then you start playing their games, and you just lost your high position of power that, women keep trying to get. So, that, she couldn't rise above it. Don't try to be a man, because that's what's going to happen to you. But the men never lost their position of power. We have Trump here that was like out and proud rapist, thing going on, and nobody's like, resign. This thing. I was like, it's not even letting a rapist go. It's them actually being the rapist. And everybody's fine with it. Up until Wilma come up in here, and they're like, we're ready to do this. Well, I don't want her in there either, because, I mean, when you look at it from this perspective, it's like, she's not for women. She's technically not for women, because she would minimize any type of sexual violence on us, regardless of anything, and then she would run us over. Now, we have a lot of women like that in any political party. We have them in the Dems, we have, in the Republicans. They all hold these same things, and so they do not fight for us. They do things that go against women. They do things that go against women and to harm them and keep them down. And because they were so indoctrinated with this thing that we should go target groups of women, I mean, it's the dumbest thing ever. And actually, one of some of the good things when it came up with I was talking about that Miley and Sinead O'Connor thing. When it came up, it really kind of put it in perspective of like, what are we actually fighting against here? Because like, you don't want to go, oh, she shouldn't be allowed to do what she wants over there, even though I wouldn't do it myself, right? It starts going into this thing, and you want to be able to support her where we're not throwing her in prison for doing that. But then at the same time, the other topic was coming up of like, did anybody manipulate, the teen to do these things? Because you have to ask that too, and make sure that that's, is not going on in this whole thing, because it could be a thing where it's like 10 years later, she come out and go, oh no, I actually, there was a whole bunch of people that told me to do that, and then I thought it was okay. I don't know, some bullshit, right? So it could happen like that. I don't want to support people being led into doing something where they wouldn't have done initially on their own accord, So, and it's hard to tell from this perspective of what's going on over there. And, but the whole thing is about agency, because you're talking about having the right to do what you want and be free, versus somebody telling you what to do and degrading you because you do it. It's like, I don't need to do that. It's not harming me. It would harm me if it became a thing where, and it was like this, where there was like a demand that I have to do these things in order to become successful to this thing, right? So, yeah, it's quite a topic, but I mean, she just falls in line with I'm a brainwashed bot and I was never really for women. I target myself and I just lost my job. But other men could do this all day long and be the rapist, and they're still going to hold that position of power. Good job, you failed, you suck. It's that whole thing. Don't be a man, because they won't have anything to fight. I mean, they'll be fighting against you because you're going against them, but you don't want to have this happen where they use the thing that they don't go after men for to take you down. You should be standing up going, I'm not the one for rapist, but these men are. Like, you really want to put yourself in that highest power, of morale, I guess you could say, for the public going, well, I'm not the rapist. I didn't rape him, and I wouldn't excuse rapists, but these men do, right? And it makes them even look worse because they are worse. I'm like, because they are worse, but she's not. I mean, she's equal to these other men, right? Okay, yeah. So what it says is Christianity is the largest religion in Hungary, and Catholicism and Calvinism being its main denominations. So that's what you need to know. And they teach male supremacy. So she actually went by being a Catholic. I mean, she went by the book. I mean, she is following the religion for what it is, her being a stupid bot for male rapists. Yes, I mean, basically, you're supposed to let us rape people. It's not a big deal. I totally forgive them and let them all go. Yeah, and abuse kids. Basically. So no, she's going by her religion. Take away women's rights. Don't let them get abortions. Anti-agency. If there's something that's anti-agency, it's a pretty good gauge that you're doing something wrong. Okay, so. You're being a rapist. That's how they teach rape. That's that's the actual real stuff of teaching kids to be rapists. Not about sex. That's how they're teaching them to be rapists. Okay, go against their will. Isn't that the action of a rapist? Yeah. I don't know who's coming out of it. If you're having a problem and you're in this portion here, you really need to study your doctrine and understand like how they promoted that and they created those monsters. And you are supposed to let them go. You're supposed to totally let them just touch everybody, and you're supposed to submit to those guys. Okay. Yeah. So I don't think they really comprehend. Now they wouldn't comprehend it well because the Pope was promoting that or putting out to them that it must have something to do with pornography, which was really bizarre. Now that came up a long while back. It's just a manipulation by them. It has nothing to do with that. The mindset of doing something that's anti-agency. So that's what I was saying. I go, it's the Christians are teaching rape in a million different ways. So when you look at it like that in the proper context, you'll start saying, oh yeah, they keep teaching rape. And even though the topic may not be sexual, has anything to do with that, they're teaching go against your will, ignore what their pleas of no, and they must do this. And if they don't, we're going to force them. That's the message. That's the deeper thing about it. So, yeah, the whole thing about, oh, they're so ignorant. They don't know they're raping each other. Like, when I'm pulling up the thing about the frat housing stuff in school, I was like, sure, the kids are so stupid. They don't even know, like, the action is actually sexual assault, technically. Was the action when they were doing it trying to be sexual? No. And that's the mindset thing about it. It was like you're trying to do something harmful, humiliating, and funny. But to, the levels of this, like the levels that we did stuff, was nowhere near shoving brooms up anybody's bodily like orifices anywhere, okay? We were not doing things like that. We were not rubbing genitals and doing these things. It's all bad. I'm saying it's all bad. And the society, a lot of people partook in that, regardless of how that began, but it's kind of cycled out, and yeah, it's all bad. It's all bad. And there was no correction over it. It was so promoted that I'm sitting here just like, I cannot even believe that for some reason this thing happened and it didn't even click on, I don't know, there's a whole thing to it. It's upsetting. um but when you understand the who was ruling at that time, you're looking at the time frame. It was all ran by Christians, right? It was like 90 some odd percent at that time. And so if they had a problem with it, then they would have stopped it, but they didn't. They were continually enabling boys to do those things, like, oh, this is a typical male thing to be like basically a rapist. And so then what it does is it normalizes it for even females, because if you're okaying it for men, then basically you're saying it's not a big deal. And so then it turns into this thing. It's pretty crazy. The whole thing right there. Oh yes. So as far as the other comment, like from a commenter, I'm like a commenter. My my one that's actually listens to things on here, and reflects, because I hope you don't mind that I answer in this way. It's just that it's reflective of the story, because they're like, they knew your family abused you and then they just didn't care. Yeah, and then you feel their hatred, and some of them are dead now, and I still feel their hatred of you, right? Yeah, so that was like my evil grandma, but the reason why she was like that is because well, I know for sure she was raped as a kid. They told her it's her fault, I'm sure. Then she started abusing me, so it was sort of that dynamic there. And no, I do not forgive her, because she was an adult at the time, and so she knows better than to abuse children and go on like that. She was horrible. And the other scary thing about her was she worked in the school district, allegedly. And I was like, oh, please tell me she had nothing to do with dealing with the kids, though. I don't know what she did. Like, she was like either a clerical or maybe a librarian part of that thing, or I have no idea. But the whole thought of her being in a school at all just freaks me out. But back then, how they looked at it was, it was all punishment to the kids. They used to do the dunce hats and, soap them down and whip them and take rulers and, this whole like type of Nazi type of thing right there, right? So it's just like control, control, control. And that weird Pledge of Allegiance thing. I was like, am I the only one? I thought that was like very cultish, and the kids, half the kids, I don't know if I want to say half the kids, but a bunch of us were kind of like, what is this? And we were never even told that we had a freedom to just like sit down and not do it. I just didn't care for the whole thing because it came off very cultish, and it is cultish because, as you see, there's a group in society that those are kind of like the Trump or Patriot people, where it's kind of like it was there and it got them to be like that. And then if you didn't stand up for it, then they would be violent to you. Like, it meant like there's something wrong with you, and all these different things. And I go, not everybody had a wonderful time in this country, mostly everybody but a white man. I mean, so but it was just it's not even that, it's just the action of, I worship a flag, which is so interesting that Christians would even fall to this, because they're supposed to be very anti, like, idol worship of something else, this thing. And for some reason, this was written by some Christian priest or something. I was just going through it and I was like, yeah, it makes sense why they would turn something into a cult. It's just and then they added wording into it with the God thing. And I was like, yeah, but not everybody in school is religious. Though, even though at that time, the vast majority were, it still needs to reflect everyone, regardless if the majority is a bunch of psychotics, right? So it didn't. And I was religious at the time. So even still, it was like there was a problem with that thing to me. I just thought it was the most bizarre, ridiculous thing ever. And I still do. So I think my perception of that was proper at the time. It's just, what is this ridiculous stuff that humans are doing? Why are we doing this to a piece of fabric? You know, it's like, you'll understand, kid. You need to understand that, you know, this country means everything to us. And if anybody sits there and says one single bad word, we're going to take them out. You know, that's basically the message. And they were saying they did it for unity. I'm like, no, it actually is an underlying thing for divide. And because it doesn't let you accept somebody that it doesn't want to do that, and, you know, understand like why they feel that way. You know, it does this thing. But anyways, yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think all of us could probably relate to what you just said there. And if they don't, they haven't gone to therapy. I don't know. There, I mean, I will say in our family, we didn't have these, like, my dad didn't talk all filthy, gross, like, about women's sexuality to me, like any of those things. Or, I didn't see him pretend to grope women, even like some of these fathers don't even pretend, but I mean joking around about it, like, I don't recall. Doesn't mean he didn't. It would be something that was just so not paid attention to, but generally I would think I would remember because I'd be really grossed out by it. And so those are some of the things that other families are doing, and I'm like, oh wow, dude, if my dad started talking like that, I would barf. It was my friend that was trying to ruffle his feathers and say some things, and he was like, "Oh no, don't," you know, like this thing about it. And she thinks it's funny, and it's like, actually, it's hella creepy. Like, I just couldn't imagine doing that to her parents. I mean, to me, I was just like, "Oh my God, I'm dying. Like, what are you doing?" But yeah, for her, she was comfortable to do that. She thought it was hilarious. And I was like, dude, you're, you know, luckily, well, I don't think anything happened in between them, but there's some fathers here that might go on with that. And it's just, it wasn't a top, you guys, it just wasn't a topic. It's really creepy going back into the era there where everything is like okay to just be completely criminal, and nobody gets busted for it. You're like, my family did this. So, like, you need to submit to your family and you never question them and you need to let them abuse you. And that's love. That's what they kept saying. I was like, what the heck? Your father loves you, even though he, like, almost made you blind. You know, this thing. And I considered our stuff, some of our stuff, pretty bad, but it's nowhere near other people's families. I mean, just a little bit of abuse is bad enough, and it can cause the same damages as some other family where it's like heavily, like some even far worse things. That's how come I think a lot of us, when we were kids, started to relate on some level, and then there was points of it where I couldn't relate because they were doing things that I wouldn't do. And so I started looking at that. I was like, why are they doing that? Like, what is the difference between me and you? Because it's not like we didn't all have these certain abuses, but there was some parents here. Like, when I went into the story yesterday, the one you guys are posting on, um, I was looking at the entire dynamic, not just that guy. I was looking at that guy totally on his own. And then I was like, who are his friends? He seems to have a lot of family and friends here. And you're going to tell me that none of them knew this. And so when I started looking at them, when I was talking about, yes, or guilty by association, because when I was looking at all of that, it started to show me a bigger picture. And I go, oh, yeah, those people they wouldn't even care because they're saying comments and doing things. And they have kids too, right? And their kids are on these platforms. And so they're seeing dad posting these other things, and they're just inappropriate. Um, in a way, it's not talking about, like, when you're talking about sex with kids or anything like that, it's not even in an educational way. It's men doing their nasty, gross stuff about women and men in acts that I would have just never talk about in front of children like that. And so they were just posting things like that onto the platform. And it's so funny. I'm the one that gets targeted. I was like, no, I don't do that. I mean, the thing is, there's a big difference. So there's a normalization there with that. And then in some of the extended family, there was even more people, okay? Then they were like heavily religious, like in this area, in the state where they want to, put them all to death. Which, that's why I said, I go, oh, here's a family member. They would have to put them to death. How do they feel about that now? Because now you got a family member. Maybe they do. Maybe those people over there would want to. I have no idea. But they were really close. They were posting all these wonderful comments to them. So I decided to go see them. I decided to go take a look at them. Because I'm like, you don't see nothing wrong with this? Let me see about you. Why are you not seeing something wrong with this person? Because this person is hella scary to me. And then I go look at them, and I'm like, oh, wow, the men up in here on that side is scary as hell, too. And there's conduct here that my parents would have never done to me and take photo, doing this thing. But then on top of it, they were flinging out all that, strange, they're killing children and, touching doing this thing, right? Those people. And I'm like, I wonder how they feel right now. Because they started posting that a year prior, and they're sitting there talking with the perpetrator. And I'm like, yeah, it fits right into this thing. I go, the woman is so out of touch that all the predators are sitting right on her lap. And she's just like, oh, yeah, they're, this and that. Because that's what it was meant to do, is make them the idiots. So these men can go out and do all that stuff. And it's right in their own home, right? Right in their own circle, right in those things. And what is wrong with them to not pick it up? They've always made me the devil. And it's like, no matter what I did, I go, I'm telling you that person is bad. And they don't listen to me. And you have to make your own choices, right, in life. And you're going to figure it out. And they will target me to no end and protect that perpetrator. But as I'm saying, I go, there's a lot to learn when you're looking at that entire circle of people, of why that's happening, and then what they're okaying right now. And it's like, I don't know how you are sitting there and not seeing that this looks creepy as hell. Everybody was literally posting how wonderful it looks with him with children all over him. And I was like, oh my God, no. And also his face, because a lot of victims, because it's not just me, where we're talking about this look on their face. I go, it's a real thing. It's like, we're trying to figure out what it's coming from, but you could tell, they would judge him like psychopath. They would judge him psychopath with that strange look on the face, because that's the look that I've associated with, possibly with addition of autism, possibly, I don't know, we don't know, possibly with. And then with that guy, I was like, I think he has multiple things. I think it's just compound, a bunch of different things. But in their family, it's so ridiculous that I was like, oh, a major abuse must have happened in the early portions, because the whole unit of people, the friends, the family, the extended family, are all off kilter. They're off kilter in different ways. And so I was like, okay, all right. So we gotta look at that and study it and kind of try to figure out how to you want to fix that thing right there, because it's a hot mess. You don't want to sit there and wait for 40 years down the line, and this person's doing this to a million people, and everybody's going to sit there and be like, we had no idea. And I was like, I'm going to tell you why you had no idea. Because I'm not going to let anybody throw these excuses out. It's just I can now start to answer why they're acting that way. Because it's normalized in their family unit. And then it tells us a lot more. It tells us they were all abused. Then it tells us that they all got touched. I mean, when we start going there, it's it's from getting more and more information. Because the more and more information that we have, the more and more we know how to tackle that. And then the more and more, this will lessen. And then the more and more everybody will feel safe, right? Because isn't that the goal? Because that's what everybody's goal is, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't have this big gun thing going on, particularly, and that's beyond the whole thing where they're trying to teach their sons to be Rambo and military, which needs to stop. But the whole concept of that is really, at the end of the day, they're freaked out about everybody because they're a bunch of criminals. Well, what makes up a criminal? what are the things that is creating that, right? It's like everything in society. If they're sitting there throwing them out on the street and doing all these things, and they're creating more criminals, or abusing the kids, or creating more criminals, or uh not giving proper resources to people, creating more criminals. Like, you're looking at that whole thing right there. So you have to kind of tackle that. So then you correct that other thing. This is more doctoral. I like doctoral. It's more doctor. Like, when you're looking at the thing, it's not, oh, it's just this black and white thing. Oh, they need to learn not to touch people. It's like, no, it's way beyond that. It's way beyond that. So it's that thing. So, and then there's things that I think we're not catching. Like, we don't know what they are. Because I'm like, how come nobody can answer what that stuff is? I go, if we're picking it up, then you need to be able to answer what that is. I don't think they know what that is quite yet. I know they're sociopaths, but I think there's like, because they don't all have this, like, these other additions going on. They all don't have baby face. They all don't have some of these other looks that they're having. And I was just like, it's groups of them, and then there's these groups of them, and then there's, these additions. I don't think what they know what those additions are. I think they've just been lazily going bipolar, lazily going mania. I don't know. It could be part of those things, but I don't know. I can't answer it, and I think a lot of people can't either. We just talk about this crazed look in their eye, but they have it continuously. Like that guy, it's not like it turns off and on. It's that it's there, and the thing with him, like, where I keep thinking autism when it goes back, is like his mannerisms are off, and he's like, oh, I didn't know that I looked that way. I will try to put on a smile, like this thing, which we've seen in another serial killer case. So, well, a lot of them actually, but where their social cues are off. So that's why I was like, I don't know, but maybe it's not autism, and it's just another disability, and then it's something to do with that. Like, I don't know. I don't know how to answer it. I just know it's there, and the look is there, and it's off. It's off. It's just off. And then it looks creepy, right? Because it's off. I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but we've been finding out, like, over the past, where mothers were taking things that were considered okay while they're pregnant, or maybe they hadn't looked at the conduct of men doing a bunch of drugs and drinking, and their sperm is completely effed up. Okay, so I don't know, but where those things can cause birth defects. And so maybe some of the things that we're seeing could be a correlation to some other thing that was considered safe and okay in the past. And there's a lot of research that they have to do to figure out when those things are bad and what they could be causing. So that's why I'm saying, I can't answer those things because I'm not in those fields, but I know that that consists of a lot of research, a lot of, like, they would have to know what to look at and what were women taking at the time, that, and then actually acknowledge that this is popping up in these people. And that if it is a relation, a correlation to something maybe that the father or the mother were taking or doing, or something in their genetic, something, right? And then it could be coming out and creating that. And then it just could be a little confusing, because it's like, I know autism wasn't brought up a long time ago, and they've been researching a lot on that. And then they just used to be very lazy and just go psychopath. It's just so, this thing, they're born bad. That's not true. But yeah, so I'm just thinking it's probably something in that field of things. It's just, I'm not, when I look for it, it's just like, I know they're this, but I know there's these additions. So what the additions are, I have no idea. I just know they're there, and it helps me figure them out though too, but I don't know what that is. I don't know why it's doing that. And if I had that problem, I would want to know why I have that problem, So it's not like, something to be like you're bullying someone about, or you're being mean to them about. It's like they should know what's wrong with them. And then is there a way to fix that? Or is there a way to limit that from happening? Is it, you're looking at it like that? Or at least I am. Unlike these other people, they're like, put them all to death. It's like, you're causing it. You're causing the meat of the problem. Like, you're not, like, nobody is born like, I'm going to just go murder everybody. I'm just going to go kill a bunch of women. Like, this is not what's happening. It's just like those other additions could just be affecting It could be affecting learning. It could affect, it's hard to say because I don't know what that is. And then when you know what it is, then you can go, oh, okay, then it would affect how they, respond to other, or, something like that. Like, I can't, it's just really trying to go off of something that you don't know what it is yet. I should point out, so in my father's years, he's from that, what is it, the old generation? What do they call him? The massive abuser generation before the baby boomers. Okay, so they in the research with autism, actually, they were talking about, it seems to be higher in families where they have the older father, like really older, and one of the parents being older and stuff, and then the kid. I don't know how far they've gone with that, but that is present in our family, okay? But it could be related more to when they're talking older, the correlation to something happening in the past that people did that then could have caused that, right? So I don't know how they're looking at it. I know initially they were talking about autism being possibly caused by vaccines. Okay, that was a very old thought, when people are not educated on what things are. Like, it popped up and they started realizing, oh wow, all these people, and some of these, like, you're speculating, right? Like, I was sitting there just speculating, like, I don't know, it could be that, could this. But it's not factual. It's not a fact that it happened that way. It's just, you don't know what it's from. And so, but that is present in our family. And I was like, yeah, my brother, I'm pretty damn sure was. And so could that mean that I probably am too, or something on the spectrum? I go, yeah, maybe, because it might answer for my strange word problem. Okay, so it's strange because I know the words and it's not quite dyslexic. It's strange. It'll come and go. And I still got an A in English. But the spelling will flip around sometimes, but I can read it, but if I'm reading it out loud, it doesn't come out right. But in my brain, like, I'll sit back and as I'm going through the clip again, I'm like, what did I really say that? Like, it's like my brain is now more relaxed and I'm kind of like, I know that word. Like, why did I say, it just happens. That's been an ongoing thing. It hasn't done anything too terrible, in anything like, but I say, once in a while, if I don't type something properly, it could totally change the meaning of what I'm trying to say, which I had it where I'm just like, when you mean the word not, like something, and then it's like, if I leave the word not out, it's just because when I'm typing, I think I'm typing the word, and then sometimes I won't type the word. I just, because I'm in thought and I'm just typing along with it. And so sometimes it does that, and I will proofread it and I just miss it. And then I post it and then I see it and I'm like, why the hell did you do that? Yeah, it's a frustrating thing, but it's part of that. And then people saying I sound drunk. I go, that you're just being a bully. Did you tell all the kids that in school? We know who's drunk. I mean, we know who has an alcoholic problem. The people that have alcoholic problems, but they're not doing it because they want to help me. If I were, I'm like, I'm not. They're doing it to be bullies. So I was like, if somebody really did have that problem, it's like you pointed out, right? So I've done those things. And of course, anybody that has those problems wants to get defensive. But, it's annoying. I mean, it's just mean. When somebody just is not even drinking and they're going off like that, they just want to be bullies. That's it. And I would guarantee that the people that are saying that are the actual alcoholics. Like, it's just something where they feel better just doing it. I don't know. That just started up here. Because a lot of the people that I pulled up on these stories, they have addiction problems and they think they can fly that with the public. I was like, oh, some accidental herbal thing. I was like, what the hell? And, I just call it out. It's like, just be honest. You know what I mean? Just be honest about it. It's like, we could tell. And yeah, and then it just kind of caused this weird thing where somebody, like, it wasn't just somebody, it was like a whole bunch of these accounts were posting this stuff to me, like, you sound like you're drunk and you're chilling, this whole thing. And it just kept doing that. And I was like, see, this is what happens when you try to, like, call that stuff out for what it is. So, yeah, yeah, that was going on. But if I do have anything that sounds anything like that, then it's probably just related to the other thing. I just never gone in to get it checked. I was going to one day, and then I was kind of like, who cares? Really, at the end of the day, who cares? And it's a possibility. Because it was funny, like years ago when I was doing the benefits for it, I was kind of like, what's wrong? Wait, I don't get it. I was like, it doesn't everybody act that way? Um, so yeah, I mean, it very well could be. So it's funny that those same people would bully me on any level, mostly during that benefit thing. So there were some people that were there for the benefit, and they wanted to be very mean to me, which isn't, it's ironic, right? It's a strange thing. It's like you're doing benefits for that, but you're going to be mean to people who possibly have it, right? So, yeah, that's some of the things. I mean, it could turn out they say no, or somewhere, I don't know. It's just when I'm reading stuff, I go, yeah, it's very possible. Just very, high function, this thing about it. But I was pretty certain my brother does, like pretty certain he fit that bill, mostly in the childhood area of stuff. I didn't act like that as a kid. He's more of like, they knew he had a learning disability. Like they said this. So it was like there was an addition with him, but for some reason with me, it was confusing to them because they realized, like, I'm smart, I'm very creative, I'm all these things. And then it was just like one day these things started happening. But in addition with it was my parents going back and forth with their fighting, and they were screwing up my, life here. And so it starts affecting, how I'm at school. They're late bringing me to school, and I get punished for them making me late to school. They're blaming me for not getting up, and yet they were fighting all night long and kept me up. It's like these things. And then they thought like I had some major problem with the word thing, right? It did come up. And then when I was alone with the teachers there and they were praising me in a private, study with them, they're like, you're totally fine. See? So it comes and goes, and it's not on purpose. It's just, I guess, just maybe it could be stress factors. It could be focus things. It could, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to those things right there, but yeah, it didn't limit me from anything. In fact, a lot of my writing, like I said, the teacher was praising me and showing off my work, my writing, even though there was spelling errors. And I like that because it's like, even though you're not perfect, it's like, it was like praising, like not to be so perfect, and I have a problem with perfection too sometimes. So it's like, it was kind of a good thing. It's like, it's okay if it's not perfect. It's like the overall thing about it. And I think there was a lesson in that and how she viewed it. Because I don't think other teachers would have viewed it that way. They would have said it's totally, totally terrible. You cannot even spell right. You need to correct that thing. And I wouldn't show it to anybody until you pick, there's those people. But it was kind of teaching this thing, we're human. Things are, but it's the overall work. It's like, it's coming from me, and it's, this thing like that. I think that's what they were really focused on. I love that teacher to death. Like, just because the encouragement with that, even though it's not perfect, it definitely was not perfect. And maybe as far as my mom goes, besides her abusiveness in it, maybe the fact is that she is on the spectrum too. Like maybe they both are in some way, and then just the combo of those two. Because I pulled out, I go, she's done stuff that it just doesn't make any sense. And then, but she doesn't fit quite the mold of some other people's really abusive mothers. It's kind of this weird thing. And I was like, I cannot answer what her problems are, but she has a problem. And then you go into like, reality sometimes, like you'll tell her something totally horrible is going on and she tunes it out. Like there's this weird thing where she tunes it out. And maybe it is a combo of abuse, that, or and something else. Like, I can't answer for it. Like, I can't, I wouldn't necessarily call her a socio unless she did try to poison me, when you start going into this thing. But there's a problem, that much I know. The my father, though, on the other hand, is like a total sociopath. Like, what the hell? The conduct of his is insane. But I have something to go off of, because when you look at your own families and the dynamics of that thing, like, I don't even need like an outside story to, go into that stuff. It's like, I know the dynamic, like the mother did this, and then her family did this. So then you can start analyzing that thing, and then it answers like a lot of other people's stuff too, right? So you're looking at it, and you could see that there is this early period there in their childhood growing up. Then you see in the public, they're like, we're gonna hide this, about, we're gonna protect these kids for whatever I don't know. It's just their mindset about it. Like, we're gonna protect this area of kids and not let the public know all their terrible behavior, or the terrible behavior of the parents during that time period and stuff like that. And I go, well, that's the area that you need, and that's the area they protect. And then there's a strange thing that they do where they minimize sexual violence on kids if they're all kids, right? And I was like, no, sexual violence is sexual violence, regardless of how old the perpetrator is. And if there's children doing sexual violence on other kids, and they need to be definitely corrected right away. And then if you can't correct it, then you're in trouble. It's kind of this thing, because, like I said, I think every kid has done a lot of these conducts. It's just they're corrected in some way at some point, hopefully. But if they're not, these are the ones that are sitting there going, what? My family promoted it. The public promoted it. This thing and that thing. And something in the environment didn't correct it. And that's what I was saying. I go, a lot of us did these things, so you could refer back to those things. It doesn't mean you're a sociopath, but it does mean you did kind of sociopath behavior, like the behaviors of it. And then, is it going to dictate whether you're going to be a total rapist? I mean, if you keep doing it, yeah. I mean, because it tends to progress. It becomes this thing where it's like, I don't care about other people's agency. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to all these people. So I was looking at that too. I was like, wow, oh, yeah. I go, well, what corrected, these things for me? And what did I do? So I'm looking at that too. Like, what was in my environment that made me go here versus fork off into this other direction where many people still are. And it was just I was kind of contributing it to the multiple abuses that happened right there in my childhood. Because then I was like, I want to get away from it. I don't want anybody to do this to me. I don't want to do it to anybody. Like this thing. There was like a real bad thing that happened there. And so it's not like I grew out of it. I mean, it came out of my mouth, like, I think one time, because I didn't know how to explain that. But, no, it wasn't grow out of. In fact, it took a very long time to correct some of those things right there. Like, there was some things in it. And then it was like this slow thing where I was listening to another friend of mine at the time, where they were going on like, I have abandonment issues because this and that and this and that. And I was like, totally separated from it. Like, oh, that sucks. My parents didn't do that. And technically they did. But I'm just listening. Like, at that time, I was just absorbing a lot of what people were telling me. And then just like one day I threw out something that my dad did to somebody, and they're like, they did that? That's terrible. That's abuse. Like, somebody, because you're thinking it's normal. I was like, isn't everybody's parents like this? Yeah, they probably are, but it's not normal, and it is abuse. Like, you sometimes just need somebody to tell you that, because you think, oh, isn't this what goes on? It's kind of that thing. And so, no, I was heavily trying to be this perfect human. So I even had a goal. Like, I do not want to be a horrible person. I mean, it just was there for whatever reason. It wasn't because of religion. It wasn't because of any of these things. It's like, I don't want to hurt people. Like, I'm not that person. I want to help people. I'm very, that type of person. So if it wasn't falling in line with that type of thing, then I really try to work on it. I was like, it's just some things happen because of the abuses when I was younger. So it's just me correcting those things, and it's a lot of work to do that. It was a lot of work, mostly getting over an eating disorder. Holy crap. So I was able to do it. A lot of people have to go to clinics to get that thing fixed. And to say if it's fixed completely, so a lot of those people, it was a matter of what's causing it. What do I want to do? I don't want to die. So the goal isn't that. What is the thing that was, fueling that? And, we've got to make a total change and correct this, and don't do these actions anymore. It's probably very similar to being just a general addict, because it's like you go to something because you feel, this. But it was just like, it was hard. Because it's like, if I do this, I get this feeling and I want to do that. And so then I have to like fight against that. And like the more you do it, it's like a habit. And then all of a sudden you don't do it anymore. And then it ended. I never had that, but it took time. It wasn't like overnight or something. But it took time to work on that. There's a lot to grow out of. I mean, that took a lot of work. I mean, you have to want to do that work. You have to care enough to do it, so that, getting into deeper things. It would apply to all these other problems that we're talking about in each thing of your actions. So if you're going out and you're just acting out and doing these things because you get a thrill and a high off it, or whatever you're getting off of it, or it's making you feel better because you're doing this and you're trying to control the situation, doing those things, it's trying to break those things. And then if you have a million things that you're doing, then it's like, it's quite a mess. And I think that's why there was no cure to this other stuff, just because you don't even have it in you to care about other humans. So why would you care? I mean, why would you care? That's the whole thing. Like, they don't care about themselves. They don't care about others. They just run on this thing. And so it's almost an impossible thing to try to get somebody to give a shit. That's the addition to it. Because it's like, for me, I gave a shit. So it's like, yeah. And I have feelings, and I don't feel good if I did something to hurt some person, whatever, So, that's the depth of that topic. It's definitely, when you're looking to correct this whole thing right here, it is complex. It's simple to kind of understand, but it's complex. And when you're talking about fixing something, because it's so easy to go, okay, here on paper, this is what we have to do, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but when you put it in motion, a lot of things need to happen, and trying to get people all on board and to do things is like, ha 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 ha, yeah, they're gonna fight against it. Oh yeah, so I should repeat kind of like some of the signs of my brother when he was really young, just to kind of like, if you guys went through this or seen it or whatever, why I think that's what was wrong with him. Because when he was really little, he would have these fits. He would have these like crying fits. And then once in a while he would be violent. But for the most part, he would have these violent fits. He would have these crying fits. Like, we would just go, I was a really happy kid, actually, when I was really little. And I was pretty mellow, and I liked a lot of attention. Like, I was like one of those kids, and I enjoyed it. It didn't bother me. I wasn't like this, like, totally shy kid yet. I think that just developed over time as I was getting bullied at school. I think it was something to do with that, because prior to that, I wasn't like, oh, this thing. I was very outspoken. I was like, hey, kids, my parents already bought me that. So you gave me that. It's just a very over honest, like, thing. And that was also instilled in me, too. So it wasn't just something that, I had this problem. I just have to keep being overly honest about stuff. But my parents, don't lie about anything. Okay, so somebody did something like that, and then it comes off like I'm rude. And I was like, them. Because they didn't go, don't say, you just don't know how to nitpick that thing. But anyway, my brother would have these fits. We'd go out to a restaurant, and we're all eating and having fun, and all of a sudden he would have this fit. Like, he just starts having this crying fit, and then we all have to leave because of him. and I'm annoyed by him. I'm like, thanks, dude. Like we're really little at the time, but it's just, this thing. And he's a year older than me. And then one day he's like walking around the house with like one shoe on and one sock on and this weird thing. And he's walking on his tippy toes and doing all this crap. And when I'm little, I'm watching it. I'm like, it's kind of funny to me. I was like, why are you doing that? That doesn't make any sense. And he's like, leave me alone. Like he gets very stressed out. Like, don't even ask me like why I'm doing something so weird. And yeah, and then they noticed that he started having learning disabilities, but yet he had a 4.0. So he's a smart guy, but he had learning disabilities. So these were the traits that were showing up in the early portion. And then he has problems um making decisions for himself, really, because it's like my dad telling him how to be. And then so all my dad has to do to him is like tell him some terrible thing about me, and then my brother will get like mean and violent or something. It was bizarre. But I do think that he was on the spectrum, definitely, just from those early actions there. He's able to do things on his own. It isn't that. But he definitely did. And then I wasn't really thinking about me at the time because they pretty much just they started to think something, and then it turned around being they're like, you're fine. I go, okay, yeah. So then like I said, I didn't start questioning it until this thing came up. They're like, you want to do some benefits for autism? I'm like, what is that? And then I started reading on it, and I'm like, I don't get it. I was like, I don't get it. Is that something wrong? They're saying this stuff. And oh, it came up actually it came up another time. So I was at my job, that human trafficking job, with these stupid guys, right? Like I don't like to look at them. They just gross me out. It almost feels like they're raping me when I'm looking at them. I don't want to remember their face. Um, it's just a common thing that I always did. And so the guy's like, what's wrong with you? I go, I'm just artistic. I don't look, I said artistic. I go, I don't look at people. He's bothering me, right? So then he's like, autistic. And I go, I didn't even know what it meant. And then when I was looking into the thing, I go, oh, I guess they do that too. So then I was like, I don't know, maybe I'm a autistic. Um, so it was kind of there, like this thing about it, but it wasn't like you could like really tell. If I do, like, it's not something you can really tell. It's just sort of these behaviors that I do, that maybe, and I get a lot of bullying just generally because they think I'm different, and I don't feel the need to bend to people to make them treat me better. I think that people should treat me just like anybody else, and they did not. And so they decided they wanted to bully me through school, um, and then into adulthood till now. And that's a problem of theirs, not mine, because they don't treat people that have different, maybe disabilities or anything, as human. They just don't. That was the whole thing with kids. Like they wanted to bully people who were different, which again relates back to Christianity, where if you don't fit into this mold, then you're something else and you need to be targeted. So they're teaching that thing. And it was hard. It was hard to kind of go through that growing up. I mean, we were taught to treat other kids, mostly like disabled kids. Like, I was so terrible though. I was talking about, I go, they were sending me over to a school for the disabled, basically. And I was saying, like, what a, I had such an eating disorder. I was eating so much, right? At this time, I was like eating so much. I was an overeater here. So they had us making all these treats for them, but I don't even think twice about anything. I was like, oh my God, why are we making this all for them? We don't get any of it. And it was like these really good, oh my God. Like I was thinking about this. I was like, I want one. We're making these like peanut butter balls, and we're supposed to bring it over to the disabled kids, right? And I just couldn't stop. I had to eat them. I mean, it makes me seem like a horrible person, but it was really self-serving, and I'm thinking about myself, and I want to eat them. Well, yeah. And we get there, and I only had four to give them. And then it's just like, You could view that. I mean, you could view that in a lot of different ways. But anyway, I had to start learning that other kids are not born like how we are, and that they need assistance to live, and some people are on machines. And so they forced me into learning that, like, you have to do something in order for a kid to learn that. And I think a lot of these parents, they don't, they treat them, they teach their kids to treat them like crap, or they just don't even introduce them, to that in their life, such as maybe they never met a person of color ever because of their town that they live in that's totally racist, where it's like they don't see him as an equal or a human because it wasn't even in their upbringing. And somehow when they confront them in some way, they have this whole other view of them because of the verbal garbage that, people spew all the time. And kind of the same thing. Or with poor people, right? So it's like if you have this rich family and they constantly like seclude you from being around people with lesser things, and these kids come out completely atrocious, because they don't have a concept, and they have the concept that they have is of their parents trashing poor people, and that their family somehow deserved it more. They tell them this whole other thing: those people are lazy, we are this, and we deserve what we got. And those people are out to get you. Like, they'll do this whole thing with these kids, and I've been noticing that too. So because they're saying it now, like if they say it out in the public now, and poor people are unsafe and doing this thing. And I'm like, well, my experience has been rich people have been extraordinarily predatory and scary criminal monsters. So, everybody has this problem, but it's like if you teach a kid that one-sided type of thing, they're going to come out being completely sociopath. I mean, big time. And then when they go and vote, it matters when they vote. It matters when they want to elect people. It matters when they want changes in policies, because they're so out of touch, and they go and they harm other people because of the way that they think. And so the way when I go at things, I look at something where it's not harming another human. It has agency for as many people as, and it's not something that's targeting a group, in that way, unless that group is doing things to harm other people. And then in which case, then you need to make sure that they don't control what's been happening here, as history has shown what they have done. And to fix that type of damage, it is a long ongoing process, and they haven't even really scratched the surface of even trying to really make that right.